This is the 3 a.m. conversation that you really want to be a fly on the wall for. This is the Sleepless Knights podcast, hosted by Mr. Lobo of Cinema Insomnia and my producer Paul Sanders of BESTOW TV. Those who listen know it's unlike all those other podcasts. This one is for us night people. We obsess on pop culture, we talk movies, talk shop, get weird, do interviews, answer your questions. We take you to the airport and to the laundromat. Okay, well, sometimes we get lost, but we promise you that we will go where no podcast has gone before. Dare you put down as little as $1 American and support our next show? We're getting it ready for you now. All you can hear for $1 or more an episode. Please join us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Sleepless Knights Podcast, all one word, SLEEPLESS KNIGHTS Only one D in podcast, even though we emphasize the odd in our pODDcast. We want normal people with real jobs to find us. Sleepless Knights Podcast on Patreon. We'd like to take this time to thank all of our Patreon supporters. Our executive producer for tonight's podcast is Anita Rivnik. Thanks, Anita. All systems go.
Attention, Sleepless Knights. Thank you for consuming this OSI 74 product broadcast, live from the Black Knight satellite. For optimum performance and safety, your host, Mr. Lobo, asks that you please listen to these instructions carefully. When in a hospital or other healthcare facility, observe the restrictions on the use of electronic devices. Switch off before boarding an aircraft to prevent interference with communications systems. Do not operate this device in the presence of flammable gases or fumes, chemical plants, or where blasting operations are in progress. Always listen hands-free while driving a vehicle. Failure to observe these instructions may lead to immediate termination. It's time now for the show to begin. Thank you. Have a very pleasant evening.
You're not dreaming. This is the Wakless Days Curtain Call. In a few moments here, we will be engaging with our fellow Sleepless Knights players, the global, what was it, Paul? Global energy grid, cyber world, something like that.
The Matrix,
Mm-hmm.
the Dreamscape.
Yes, other words.
The other word, the outer word.
The
outer world,
the nether world,
the nether regions,
the nether region, not nether, another
region,
another region. When we started doing this, we talked about how I really didn't like podcasts, but I really do love radio. I have a background. I did 9 years of radio plays with the KDVS Radio Theater Department in Davis, California. A lot of that stuff's probably lost to the ages, but I know that they replayed a few of my projects, Radio is Dead and The Last Thanksgiving, and The Believers, which we did live on Halloween with real sound effects. And I'm always been engaged with audio plays of different types, recording things on my tape recorder as a kid and doing funny voices, making sound effects and rattling pots and pans. Paul, did you do any of that as a kid?
No. Next question. Actually, yes, I did. I did a lot of that stuff.
Did you have an old funky tape recorder where you have to press record and play at the same time? And
yes, but now I know, like the story I'm going to say, I know that this is kind of a swear word nowadays, and we're not allowed to talk about this.
Yeah.
But I used to have a lot of like Bill Cosby albums.
Oh, okay.
When I was a kid, and I had a record player that would have, a record player, and then it would have a cassette that would be the play side, and the cassette that had the record side. and then it would have a headphone jack and a microphone jack. So I would record the Bill Cosby record onto the tape, and then I would pause it, and then I would plug into the microphone jack and do like either echo his bit or kind of do something like I'm interacting with it, or maybe even being like an MC or being like a radio DJ or something like that, and kind of talking with that. I was wrong. He wasn't even on record. It was a reel-to-reel.
Oh boy.
That I had recorded. He himself had aired on HBO, and I had recorded it with a reel-to-reel, and I was taking the reel-to-reel out from the reel-to-reel to cassette tape, and then I was recording my reactions to the cassette tape in between.
That's something.
I didn't have a microphone, so the reel-to-reel had a built-in microphone. I didn't have a microphone to plug into the thing. I discovered if you plugged in headphones, they worked as a microphone. So I was using headphones as a microphone to record myself reacting to Bill Cosby.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I did a lot. Bill Cosby had some great bits, even though he's obviously a scumbag. We never knew that. We didn't know that.
He formulated a lot of my comedy, what I enjoyed of comedy and everything. So
but the chicken heart, I always think of the chicken heart story, which is interesting because that parallels our old Arch Obler radio plays that he probably listened to.
Correct. Yes, because he would go through listening to those plays, and he'd reenact those plays.
Yeah, Lights Out, especially.
Yes, Lights Out. Snakes! Get out of here, snakes! Love the art, hate the artist.
The very first horror host was a radio character called the Old Witch. Inner Sanctum was another show which had a host. There'd be the long creaking door. Come in, So they would, sort of predecessors to the television shows of the 50s that would have things like the control voice from the Twilight Zone or Rod Serling from the Twilight Zone. And certainly Vampira and Zachary. I think a lot of those guys, and even the comic books of the 50s, like with the Crypt Keeper and the Vault Keeper, they were just kind of basically repeating the format that radio created of having a story being told to you by a spectral narrator. I loved listening to radio plays, loved creating radio plays, loved kids' records. Did you ever have like those Power records where they would have comic book stories and things where you'd read along? Read along,
yep. And 2XL where it was interactive.
Question 14.
Yeah.
Who played Buck Rogers in the 25th and a half century?
But he had read-alongs
Gil
too.
Jawad? What?
But he had read-alongs too.
Oh, he had a read-along too?
Yeah, I remember having a few read-alongs with him, and you could...
Please turn the page.
Yep.
Is that how he did it?
Yeah,
I'm just
please
guessing.
Turn the page, and when it would get to the end, please push B, Push B now for more of the story.
Push B now. I can imagine that. Goldilocks walked up to the giant red door. Please press C now.
Now you make me want to put Wakeless Days Rides Again on an 8-track and find a 2XL.
I recorded, there was a bunch of morning drive time radio guys called Robbins, Kinney, and Cowan in the 80s. They were on a radio station called K-Pop that played a bunch of new wave. And they did all these like elaborate skits where they were Ghostbusters, and they had like a poster of Mr. T to scare the ghosts and a squirt gun to squirt the ghosts, and all this kind of, they had a guy who did a skit called Ugly America. Welcome to Ugly America. I'm John Paul Pope, and he would talk about, different things. And they just did these like really elaborate radio skits. And I'm sure across the country, there were the 3 funny morning zoo guys doing radio skits. Mm-hmm. But I would try to record them on our 8-track. And I would try to cut the commercials out. And the only way to cut the commercial, there was no pause button. You had to literally like pull the tape out of the 8-track recorder, just so it would stop recording, and it would eat the tape half the time. But I had like hours of just those guys talking with just little snippets of the songs that they played. And, all that stuff's really interesting, and of course, I always talk about the Ron Dante album that I had when I was a kid, where it was a Spider-Man rock opera, where it was him and the Kingpin, or him and Doctor Strange versus the Kingpin. And there would be these groovy bubblegum pop songs that would come up throughout the storyline. But I guess the reason and did you listen to any of the NPR radio plays, like the Star Wars ones or the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
I may have. It's hard to say, but I may have heard those things.
Because they did an amazing adaptation of the Star Wars movies, and they filled in a lot of Luke's early days on Tatooine, and the famous scene with Jabba the Hutt that was cut out of the movie was in the it was the first time we ever knew that Han Solo bumped into Jabba the Hutt there at the docking bay. All of those things happened in the radio play version of Star Wars First.
Right.
And they would have, it was interesting too, because they had some of the stars, they'd have like Anthony Daniels as C-3PO, and, R2-D2 doesn't, Ben Burt just hits his magic noise machine and makes R2-D2 happen. You don't need to have Kenny Baker for the radio play.
Archie Bunker as R2-D2. Edith.
Oh God, yeah. Get those sand people out of my neighborhood. And then they had Brock Peters as Darth Vader. But, all of that stuff I feel like was very exciting for me. The theater of the mind, how just hearing a little bit of music and sound effects kind of transports you into that place. And you listen to books on tape, don't you, Paul?
Yeah, there's actually maybe when we come back from break, I'll eject some out of the space pod and I'll read some of the details off them. But yeah, there's a company that's out of DC. They had a contract. I don't know if they still have the contract or not, but they had a contract with Marvel and DC where they would adapt their comic books into radio dramas. So they're billed as books on tape, comic books on tape, but it's more than comic books on tape. They have the sound effects, and there's multiple people doing different roles and everything else. It's not just a book on tape. And, there's a few of them that I have where, it's like, I like this story. I liked the Kevin Smith story. That's one of the things that brought me back in the thing. So I bought Guardian Devil when they had that. And I bought, what was it called? Days of Future Past. Like I bought that one because I love that comic book story. But then there's other things where it's like, I'm not going to read Extremis. I like Extremis. It's an Iron Man storyline. I'm never going to read that. So I might as well get that on tape. I'm never going to read Crisis on Infinite Earths. So I might as well get that. And the Crisis on Infinite Earths, I think, is across, like, there's 3 volumes of it. There's so much of it. Wow. There's a lot of story to it. So it's like, I might as well just get those things and listen to it. And those were the things because I was driving a lot to Comic-Con and everything. So that's the stuff that I was playing in the car to Comic-Con. It was either playing podcasts or I was playing radio dramas, because I just get sick of radio after a while, and there are 3 songs that they can only play.
Yeah, Dixie and I was on a hunt. I really wanted to find the old BBC Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy radio dramas, and I could not find them anywhere. I walked into a record store and I asked for, just the most confusing looks when you ask for radio dramas. Even though they had sets that they had put out that were put out on tape and on CDs, no one ever knew what the hell I was talking about. And finally, I think.
And yet, they're a record store that exists right now, right?
Well, this was a few years back.
Oh, okay.
And then Dixie just ended up downloading them all, and we listened to them in the car. And it was just like, we didn't even want to stop the car. I mean, we would drive all night because we were so invested in the story.
Right.
And just having so much fun in that enclosed space, driving through that blackness in the middle of the night, and hearing about Arthur and Ford hitchhiking their way across the galaxy. We felt like we were right there with them hitchhiking across the galaxy. And I think that's kind of an amazing, magical thing about radio plays or audio plays in general is that, there's this kind of active participation in your mind. I think any amount of abstraction to something kind of allows you to play and participate in that world with them, and I think that's why people connect to books so deeply. And a lot of times, that movie wasn't as good as the book. It's like, well, the book, you're doing half of the work. It's coming out of your imagination, as on top of, it's drawing you out, it's drawing you out. And what I think what's is really interesting is that I think all of those things together, the kids' records and the books on tape and the radio dramas, I kind of feel like all of it kind of came together for this Wakeless Days production, and hopefully it will be the beginning of many, many more. We actually have some of our fabulous performers from the Sleepless Knights, I guess the Sleepless Knights players, we'll call them, not ready for bedtime players. They are waiting in the cyber world for us. So I guess we should engage our VR headsets and try to have this virtual communication with them about their experience, their curtain call, the great work that they did to help bring this vision of Paul's to life. Here we go.
Terrifying as that dream is, it is only a whisper to the harsh voice of reality that Peter Parker is about to hear. His pulse is pounding. The Green Goblin suddenly appears without warning. Tingling with anticipation, Spider-Man would be more reluctant to fight the Emerald Fiend if he could foresee Gwen Stacy's body falling, as it will, out of his spider reach. Play with the fear. Roll it around on your tongue. Savor the fateful, fascinating flavor. Spider-Man's mind is in motion. The stage is set. The cards have been dealt. He is now no more than a puppet in the shadow of his own destiny. The battle that took place high atop the bridge was destined to be the most fateful one of all. As the Green Goblin flies away, battered and weakened, a bruised and exhausted Spider-Man raises himself up to find that the only victim proved to be a girl named Gwendolyn.
You're not dreaming. You are here in the virtual cyber world, where we are having a powwow about our latest venture, the Wakless Days podDrama. Are we calling it a podDrama? I think we are.
We put the double D's in drama.
Yeah. So send the kids to bed because we're bringing the double D's out. I'm here with Paul Sanders, producer, BESTOW TV, and we are basking in the glow of our latest audio adventure. We will say hello to Jessie.
Hi.
Jessie Seaherman is better known to some of you as Cosmonauti.
Seaherman. Just pretend H isn't there.
Oh, so I've been saying Seaherman my whole life, and it's Seaherman?
Yup.
I'm going to introduce Brian Henkel, who might be known to you as our narrator. Brian, is it Henkel? Am I saying that properly now?
Henkel. I don't know how I pronounce it myself half the time.
Right, because you don't need to call yourself. So why do you need to say your name?
I don't need to say my own name.
And of course, in the center square, we have one of, last but not least, one of my favorite people, Roxanne Kateri. Are you there?
Hi, Mr. L.
Hi, Roxy. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How about yourself?
Okay. Did I say your last name properly?
That's not my real last name, but that's okay.
So it doesn't matter then. We can
It doesn't matter.
Well, hopefully that's okay that that's in the credits as well now.
No, you don't need to get it right. It's fine.
So, and I think that those of you who listen to our podDrama would know that Roxanne is our spokesperson for Grandpa Nana's corn chips. Grandpa Nana's, I feel like there's another word in there. Grandpa Nana's old-timey corn chips. Is there another word? I don't know. I guess it's just Grandpa Nana's corn chips.
I think it's Grandpa Nana corn chips. I remember that because I had to say it like 24 times.
Yes, Grandpa Nana corn chips.
Let's say, don't ask me. I've been saying it wrong since episode 1.
Yes.
Grandpa Nana corn chips.
Yes.
I kept calling it
No,
Grandma Nana
not
corn
Grandma
chips, so-
Nana. That's ridiculous. That makes no sense at all.
We got to dial that back 25%.
I found out when I got an email from Paul saying I need a retake.
All right. So normally, when we started this, I did this whole I got on my high horse about how I hate podcasts and I hate people who listen to podcasts and I hate people who make podcasts. And of course, now we've made a podcast and we are those people. But one of the things that I talked about early on is that I really like things that have a format and that are scripted more so than just two drunk guys talking about Star Wars for 4 hours. Somehow we took a right turn and did this totally scripted, completely produced, formatted program, which is the Wakeless Days Rides Again, which is something you all participated in. When we approached you for this, and I guess I'll start with Jessie, did you have any idea what we were trying to do?
No. Nope.
Okay. Well, neither did we.
You messaged me and I was like, so what are we doing? Is it scripted? Is what? And you were like, don't worry about it.
Yes. Well, what's nice about it is it's something we can't film anything right now, but this is something that we can just sort of try. I think putting our baby toe in kind of doing these long distance endeavors, which started, of course, with just Paul and I just trying to do a podcast with the two of us, not together. Because one of the things I think that was nice about the podcast is that Paul and I were in the same room most of the time. In the past, 30 episodes or something, or 20 episodes? How many episodes have we been doing?
From
now?
episode 20. So it's been, if we're up to 50, it's been 20 episodes.
From episode 30, you mean?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's been 20 episodes of us not being in the same room, which is real different. And then, of course, with the whole chronic diarrhea pandemic, we now have everyone unable to really be with each other the way that we used to be. So this was kind of an acceleration of that of, okay, well, we can do Paul and I together doing a show. Can we get some more people in here to do a show? Brian, were you a listener of the podcast before we did any of this?
I haven't any of the episodes to memory yet, but yes, I've listened to the podcast.
Obviously, this is unlike anything that we ever have done before on the podcast. So listening to the podcast wouldn't help you at all, except for maybe understanding a lot of the lame jokes.
I was super excited about it because I love old radio dramas like Thrilling Adventure Hour. So I was really excited that you guys were doing a version of it because your version would be good. Well,
that's kind of you to say. We're excited because I think we got our first choice on everyone that we wanted for this. Paul was wanting, I don't know, Paul had an idea of a narrator character, and I just immediately had thought of, you had just recently submitted the sign-off for our watch party, which I really enjoyed.
Oh, that's awesome. And I had so much fun putting together that sign-off, so that wasn't even something I expected to come up with at the time. I was just kind of goofing around.
Yeah, that was awesome.
So that's awesome that Paul heard that and thought it was a fit.
Originally, when we were going through, we were doing kind of table reads and going back and forth with the script, and the original narrator was written for Sleazy P. And I kind of approached Lobo, and I'm like, this is not Sleazy's voice. Like, this is not something he would do. He wouldn't even give a shit about either of us, let alone to be a narrator for our story. So, we need to go in a different direction. And he's like, oh yeah, you should check out the PBS sign out.
He would be completely detached from the situation.
Yes. It was a build up for a joke at the end where it's like, he was just kind of like, Paul's lost in deeper space and Lobo's upset because he didn't stop the recording in time. What the hell do I care? And it's just like, well, for that joke, it's not really worth it.
Yeah. So really in the pre-production phase, we knew that wasn't going to work. We needed something different. When we knew we were going to have fake commercials in the radio drama, we immediately both Paul and I thought of Roxanne immediately.
Yeah, I really loved doing the fake commercial for you guys. I love your humor, and I love getting to play all kinds of crazy characters, and I love doing audio drama. So that was really cool. So I was really excited to help out and do the corn chip ad for you.
Wait, we were doing fake commercials? When did that happen?
Oh, sorry,
Oy.
Paul. You were sick that day.
I thought they were real.
I just have
Didn't
to
get
say,
the memo.
I'm completely taken aback by Roxanne's real voice after hearing her do that character. Which, when you said, can you say soda again in that voice?
You want me to say it like
I
the?
was rolling on the floor like
Yes.
Grandma Nana's spokesperson.
You want me to say soda like the old lady again?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Soda,
Soda.
soda.
I grew up with that person.
Oh, I'm glad that you improvised that line, because I would have never thought to even write it down that way, and I'm glad it came out that way.
Thank you. I don't know what regional dialect she has. I think that she's speaking like 3 regional American dialects.
That's what I
like,
was
slapped
thinking.
together.
That's what I was thinking. And the whole thing is so like postmodern and kind of like surreal anyway, that I really like the fact that you can't really get a beat on the Grandpa Nana spokesperson at all, as far as what part of the country she's from or
Yeah,
she's
she's kind of Midwestern, kind of Southern, not really either one.
Yeah. It really worked though. It was really funny. And it,
Well, that's the perfect spokesperson then, just trying to
yes,
appeal.
they got exactly a cross section. And it was really exciting to bring back Alan Smithy and Cosmonauti. We kind of are continuing some of the side story from Cinema Insomnia, having those 2 characters kind of bleeding over into the Cinema Insomnia universe from the OSI universe. So it was cool to have Cosmonauti, since we have it, people ask about Cosmonauti all the time. So it was nice to just, tease that character in this. So Jessie, thank you for, recording that for us.
Yeah, I miss Cosmonauti. When you asked me if I had any idea what you were doing, I thought you meant the podcast that we're doing right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you were like, yeah, we're just recording it. So I totally reacted the wrong way. When you approached me about doing a voiceover for Cosmonauti, I was so happy. I was so thrilled. I missed doing Cosmonauti so much, and it was just so great to kind of step back into that character, even if I wasn't, wearing the wig and doing the whole shtick. It was just so much fun to just put myself back in her shoes, and it got me thinking about, can I shoot episodes from my home? Can I, I was just so pumped. It like lit a fire in me again. I was so happy.
It was really exciting for me. It was exciting that to just be talking about doing production together. But it was also, for me, it really hit me when I was closing my eyes and I was listening to the radio drama. It was like Mr. Lobo was there talking to Cosmonauti on the screen, and we were together doing something, even though we weren't really together doing something. The illusion of it made me smile to sort of, see us, or I guess imagine us interacting in the radio drama. It just definitely opened up the door for, more potential in the future.
Yeah, I would love just keep bringing me back. I love it so much.
Well, maybe I'll have to write you in the sequel.
Yes,
yeah.
I think you should, Paul.
So, Jessie, I wrote a lot of stuff where Cosmonauti actually will say phrases in Russian, and we were back and forth of like, is this, how are we going to convey this? Is, it's hard not being not in the same room with each other. And then, I had to kind of produce a kind of a small reel where there's pronunciations. I'm not going to pronounce it right myself. So I had to use like Google Translate to actually say the words.
Paul can't even translate English words.
Right. I can't even speak them half the time. Yeah. But, and it was pretty spot on when I got it. And it's like, you hit them right out of the park.
Oh, I'm so glad. I researched, I listened to different people on YouTube speaking in Russian accents, whether it be authentic or they were putting it on, tips and tricks, specific ways that, in Russian cadence, stuff like that. So I really looked into it to make sure I wasn't going to fuck it up. because it's funny that I play a character with a Russian accent because I am terrible with accents.
I remember you going, why do you keep giving me characters that have accents? I don't do accents.
The first time I worked with you, I was like, yeah, I'm good for anything, but I really am bad with accents. And you were like, okay, that's fine, no problem. And then you proceeded to create like a revolving door of characters that all had really thick, different accents, all for one episode. And I was like, oh my God.
Because I think we've had you as a Southern girl, we've had you as a Swedish girl, we've had you as a vampire, which I think we ended up just making it to where you just talk normally as the vampire. I think originally you were going to have a voice, and I think we decided it would be funnier if she just worked at Whole Foods and was pretentious and wasn't really a vampire.
I still have nightmares about when you had me do a Scottish accent.
Nightmares, night terrors.
I thought you were going to kill me when I was giving you actual like Russian phrases and stuff like that, because I was remembering back in the when we were recording, and you were supposed to be speaking an accent. We couldn't figure out what accent we were going to put you in. You were supposed to be saying things to Lobo, and then finally we settled upon just saying normal words. And then we just reverse it, and you're speaking air quotes Swedish. You're speaking Swedish from what is that? Top Secret.
Top Secret. So, yeah, where they have backwards talk as Swedish.
But I remember we were just sitting there and we were just going through like all different sorts of accents and different phrases, and it was just kind of like, this is we got to come up with something a little bit quicker.
I vividly remember that, and the message ended up saying like, yeah. Something like that.
Yeah, I think every take you said something different, but
correct.
It was great though. It actually ended up being really funny in the mix. That was the Creepers episode.
Yes.
Of Cinema Insomnia, where we had you as a Swedish tourist.
Yes.
So I guess but now that we probably won't do that to you now that we have Roxanne around who loves to do accents.
I do, and if you ever want to have me on the podcast, I have a really good microphone at home, which I'm using now, so I'm good. My Russian accent, Russian is hard, so I admire Jessie for doing that because she's good at it. Whenever I do a Russian accent, I just sound like Bela Lugosi.
May I have your attention? You can now wear the Wakeless Days Rides Again podDrama on your chest. Now available on the OSI 74 store. Look snazzy in this unique one-of-a-kind logo design, available as a free-floating logo or on the Starfield background. Buy one for you or your dog today. But don't take my word for it. Here's Mr. Lobo for more details.
What the hell, Paul? You're in here doing your dumb announcer voice. Did you put the Wakeless Days logo in the shop?
Indeed.
We don't even have an official Sleepless Nights t-shirt yet. And you doing this?
Not my problem.
You snuck it up in the OSI 74 shop. I mean, you have it like in the small, medium, large, extra large, and the mug and the mask and the notebook and all that too?
Indubitably.
All right, I'll take 2 extra large.
Sold! Get yours today at the OSI 74 shop or search T Public for the Wakeless Days.
Why is the producer doing the voiceover?
I don't know. First time that Roxanne did work for Mr. Lobo, and I was there to help produce that episode. She did Carol Channing for the first time out.
That was in the return. That's in the Return Coming, right?
That's right.
The Cinema Insomnia episode, which is coming out on DVD this month.
Nice.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that Cinema Insomnia episode, which is I think our newest one. Because they really don't like the new ones that much. They're sort of nostalgia focused, so they kind of want to put out all my episodes from 20 years ago,
And it's weird that they picked that one because that one kind of hinges on some other episodes as well. Like there are some callbacks.
I think the thing that was exciting for them is that it's a movie that's never been released on DVD before. So I think that really the whole belly dance. It's like that's a sexy premise. Belly dancing vampire in a movie that's never been released before. So that just made it too irresistible for them, and they wanted to rush that out on DVD as with the quickness. And so that'll be exciting because I think Jessie's really great in there too as Countess Blood Sugar, who does not have an accent. So that's kind of a I think Countess Blood Sugar came out of the fact that we just didn't want to keep giving you ridiculous accents to do.
And then Brian, we're just going to have to give him a lot more accents.
Yes, more accents for Brian. And I want to hear Brian read some sexy stuff.
I love that Countess Blood Sugar is very, very obviously a vampire, but I think if it was like, I want to suck your blood. I'm the Count. I think if it were like that, it would have been like too much. It would have been, I think it was like just the right amount of, that's a vampire.
I agree. I think it would have been too on the nose. I really like the fact that it's just sort of it's a totally different kind of character and a different take, not just a out of the box cliche. So I think it works really well. I actually really like Countess Blood Sugar a lot. I think it's one of my favorite characters that we've done on the show.
Too, yeah.
I think the interplay between her and Mr. Lobo is hilarious, and I think it gives Miss Mittens an enemy too. It gives since she's a vegetarian, it gives Miss Mittens a vegetarian vampire nemesis.
Cause for concern.
Yeah. And usually Miss Mittens always has the upper hand. And the fact that there'd be someone that she has to look out for is kind of, that's new territory. Paul, with the final recording is what, like 50 minutes? Like how long is this thing when it's all together?
The final recording, and that's with the opener. I threw in a couple extra real ads in the center. And then the ending and everything. It times out to be about 50 minutes, almost on the nose.
That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of content.
I mean, we were aiming for the full hour, and we were about 10 minutes short. But I was still happy that we hit that mark.
It's a lot harder with scripted content than just talking out of your ass.
Especially when everyone's not in the same room together. Paul did such an amazing job making it sound like like an old school Orson Welles Mercury Theater production, as if we were all there together. But the fact that you were able to piece all of those elements together is something else.
We were shy on human beings. I mean, there's a couple of robotic voices in there too, which I think is really unusual for a radio drama to have a couple of robots as character, a couple of computers as characters also. So it's an interesting, it's a triumph of kind of blending the new and the old. We have something very, something that would be at home in the 1940s, but also something that couldn't exist before 5 years ago.
The first round of drafts was basically me talking with Gal, you talking with Abacus and Cosmonauti, and that was just about it. And it's just like we need more people involved to convey this story. Because the voice, the robotic voices are fine and great, but they don't inflect. There's no emotion. They don't emote very well. And it's especially when you have the villain become, it turns out that the villain, spoilers, is a robot as well. That how do you convey those two moments between the two robotic voices?
Yeah, we definitely needed more. We needed fresh blood. We needed more people involved to sort of bring it out of it just being Paul and I talking to machines.
And then we brought in, Miss Mittens Kong, which is a fun voice. That's a voice I provide for the thing, and it's kind of neat how it comes about.
Paul, are you just growling into a coffee can? Am I giving away the secret?
Yeah, I have a metal coffee can that or it's not a coffee can, but it's a tumbler that I'm growling into, and then I process it at the end to make it sound like a 60-ton gorilla.
Yeah,
growling at you. A lot of people, when they've heard it, Miss Mittens on the podcast itself, they just think it's just canned, no pun intended.
Yeah.
But they think it's just pre-produced stuff that I'm just using. And it's like, well, no, because it's not flexible to how we're talking. We want Miss Mittens to be kind of interactive.
Yeah. And we've got this really bizarre scenario where, like I said, we're in kind of because we're in the world of the subconscious with the radio stuff, we can have Miss Mittens just be a gorilla for no reason.
Yeah. I mean, that was a fun aspect to do. It's like, we can do all these weird things. And because it's like Miss Mittens, doesn't really speak on camera. So again, it's like you add a character that doesn't speak on a radio drama. So it's like we kind of gave her something to do and kind of gave her a personality to kind of convey, even though it may be a temporary situation.
Yeah.
And the other fun aspect was doing the Herparoo commercial, because you and I did this episode. I think it was called "Falling Behind in the End," where we're trying to outdo each other with our stories, and it's intermixed with our mundane lives of what we actually do. And I do this story about having to be the people's champion and everything. And that's bullshit. Or you don't really believe me. And then the fact that it's funny is that there's the actual commercial does exist, and it exists in this podcast. It exists in this radio drama, and it's a real thing. I thought was a kind of fun twist to everything too, because there's a lot of callbacks to things that have happened over the last 50 episodes.
That's the thing that's really interesting, that I think the people who listen to all the shows will be pulling out all sorts of, oh wow, this is referencing this thing that they talked about on the podcast. This is referencing this thing that happened on the podcast. So definitely, this story is for the listeners of the podcast.
This is referencing Cinema Insomnia. This is referencing Mr. Lobo Does. There's a lot of stuff that comes outside the podcast.
OSI 74, and for them to even understand who Cosmonauti is, they have to have either seen Cinema Insomnia or watched OSI 74. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack.
That's good.
Mr. Lobo and I don't interact in the whole radio drama whatsoever. Our stories are separate, but they still intermingle. They cross over, but we never talk together at all. Matter of fact, when Lobo recorded his lines, he recorded his lines alone, and I recorded my lines alone so that we had perfect audio. It's funny is like when you get to the Miss Mittens scene in Mr. Lobo, that's the only time that him and I react. When you get to the Herparoo's episode, that is the only other time that we interact, but we don't interact as ourselves. Spoilers, Mr. Lobo is Herbie the Herpy.
Paul wrote this episode, which is, that's to Paul's credit. I mean, he's writing in my voice. He's writing in Cosmonauti's voice. He's trying to assimilate all these other storylines and these other characters into his own story. And I thought Paul did a really good job of kind of blending his humor and my humor, and the Cinema Insomnia humor and the sort of OSI humor, and all of the sensibilities kind of being synthesized and formed into one story.
There's a few things that ended up in the script that were real life. Like the one thing was when we did a table read, and your first line in the top of segment 4 is Cosmonauti, I need a sit rep. And you're like, first of all, you're like, what is a sit rep? Like, I don't know what that term is. And second of all, I don't think that's something that Mr. Lobo would say. So it ended up where we were spitballing, and it would be like, you're just saying the word wrong. You say sit up instead of sit up or spit up or whatever. We were going through so many things. And that's how that kind of ended up in the script.
Yeah, there are definitely some alterations like that. Yeah, where it would be like, yeah, say that thing only with the word that I said, only with the word that I didn't say, so I don't sound like an idiot.
Yeah. And then it's on the podcast, and and the corrections on the podcast.
Yeah.
And the other fun thing was that we had the crazy credits, and I had been messaging Brian for quite a bit, where it's like, I want to do this thing where you kind of go off on a tangent of self-promotion, and you're talking about something else you do. And I'm like, do you do your own podcast? What are you into? What things do you have that you can promote? And he had said to me, I'm sorry, Brian, if I'm telling this story on your behalf, but he said to me that I'm actually working on a voice for a romance book. And I'm like, I know Brian didn't know this, but I'm like, well, this is perfect because Miss Mittens is writing a romance novel and it's being read in the podcast. Wouldn't that be awesome that our narrator is the same person that's actually doing the audiobook version? And that kind of came to fruition through happenstance, where it's like, this is something that's involved in Brian's real life and just kind of ended up getting involved in the script and then turned into our universe kind of thing.
Hopefully, I hope to think this is going to open the door for more and more things. I definitely thought when I listened to it that the thing that struck me is like people are going to have to listen to this like 4 and 5 times, I feel, to get all the nuances of how it all sort of merges together.
Right.
Because it's a fairly sophisticated concept where you've got 2 parallel stories that don't really intersect, but they affect each other. And then you have all of these, various computers and characters that you have to sort of keep track of, and a lot of references to a lot of callbacks and references. I feel like it's very dense. I mean, I feel like somebody could listen to this 5 times and get something new out of it every time. Has a re-listenability to it. And that's typically on podcast stuff, there's no re-listenability. It's a one and done kind of thing.
Once you've listened to it, you moved on. And I think that once we've dipped our toe into this, that I'm a little bit more confident to start adding a little bit more characters in the sequel. So not only will I see all of you guys back for the sequel, but we'll probably get some more characters in OSI, or from OSI rather, and maybe some alternate characters that you all have already portrayed on screen as well. Maybe Countess Bloodsugar may show up as well.
Fuck yeah, Countess Bloodsugar.
Yeah. I'm hoping that too. I mean, it kind of makes, I did radio theater for 9 years in California on KDVS. It kind of is putting a fire under me to maybe dust off some of my scripts, and, maybe this could be a semi-regular thing where we could just do radio dramas.
I love it.
Or pod dramas.
I love it.
I love that you love it.
Yay.
And I love that you love that I love it.
Okay, well, I want to thank everyone, and I mean everyone. Roxanne, Brian, Jessie, Paul, of course. I like to thank myself most especially. And I hope to see you all or hear you all very soon. And I hope that everyone enjoys this pODDrama as much as we enjoyed making it. I'd like everyone to say something to the folks. Roxanne, you have anything to say before we go?
I'm very glad to be here, and everybody stay strong and be good to each other during chronic diarrhea.
Fantastic. Jessie?
Keep it real, wear a mask, and keep on trucking, kick ass, and again, wear a mask.
And somehow you had an accent for all of that.
What? Did I?
Don't forget your towel.
You don't forget your towel. That's right. And don't panic. Like the good book says, don't panic.
Oh, my God. Oh, shit. I thought of another.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Oh,
yes.
Sorry. Monday and Thursday at 8 p.m. On Twitch under the username Silly Science, I do weird random bullshit.
Wow.
Doing it.
All right.
So,
that sounds fantastic.
Tune in.
This is on
not
Twitch.
sponsored.
Twitch?
Twitch.tv. Yes.
On Twitch.
Silly Science. Yes.
Silly Science. Sounds great. Thank you, Jessie, for
Yes.
completely derailing the ending of this meeting.
It's what I do.
You're fired.
Brian, my friend, are you there?
I just want to let everybody, take this last opportunity to remind everybody to narrate the new Miss Mittens audiobook, and you have a chance to download that via audible.com at any time. Just search my name, Brian Henkel. Download those with your Audible credits so I can make $5.
$5 American dollars.
Hooray!
Well, if I had
Cash.
$5, Brian, I would give it to you because you did an excellent job on that podcast. Everyone did a wonderful job. Thank you all so
You're
much.
sweet to say.
From the creators who brought you Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, Rocket Raccoon and Groot Steal the Galaxy, comes a globe-spanning new adventure as Earth's mightiest heroes must face their greatest foes. Foes who seek nothing less than world conquest. In Berlin, Captain America battles the forces of Hydra.
You found me. That was impressive work.
I just followed the trail of slime.
The banter. I had forgotten how old-fashioned you were.
In the Savage Land, Hawkeye and the Black Widow attempt to foil AIM.
Looks like we've got a busy day ahead.
We don't even know what they're doing.
It doesn't matter, it's AIM. Whatever they're doing, it's going to be bad. AIM bad.
In Siberia, Thor and the Scarlet Witch take on the magical nemesis Dormammu.
Get me hence, creature!
In Madripoor, Bruce Banner confronts the High Evolutionary.
You're going to save us from our own nature.
In a way.
And the price is a few billion deaths.
And in Washington, Iron Man fights to stop Ultron.
What did he want?
Ultron? He wanted to rule the world.
One thing is certain, this isn't a coincidence. But what larger, deadlier threat lies behind these simultaneous attacks?
The world is going to be held to account. It will most likely die. I had the chance to prevent that. Hydra had a chance. But you stopped that, Captain America. You stopped us from saving the world.
An all-new original story by New York Times bestselling author Dan Abnett. Presented in glorious graphic audio. Marvel's Avengers. Everybody wants to rule the world.
You want to do this, or shall I, Cap?
Just do it.
It should come from you. It sounds better coming from you.
Gentlemen. Okay. Avengers, assemble!
Whoa, it was so great talking to everyone. And really, that was the first time we were ever all in one place.
Yeah, the first time that we went through this entire recording and we all weren't ever together at all. So it was
completely,
the first time
it was like the H-bomb. We were all working on our part separately.
Yes. Either you were interacting with one or the other, or I was working with one and the other, but it was never all joint together.
No, and I don't remember. I didn't record any voices with anyone,
right?
Other than myself,
right?
I recorded all of Alan Smithy's lines,
right?
Actually, I did all of Mr. Lobo's lines first,
right?
And then I went back and I just basically tried to do kind of a little more upright, a little more smarmy,
right?
Read for Alan N. Smithy. And then I did the alien voice too, right?
Yeah, but that one you did with me because I had to kind of walk you through it.
Right.
You did that with me, and you did Alan O with me.
I guess I do talk with you from time to time, anyway.
Yeah, but those are the only parts we did together because I was a stickler for having pure audio, and I didn't want internet connections and everything else being an issue.
Yeah, and then for Alan O, he was supposed to be transmitted, so we figured that it would be okay. And then you were able to give me some good direction for that character.
Yeah, I mean, as far as that part went, that part didn't exist in the original script. That was something that came natural. Originally it just kind of went where you guys, spoilers if nobody listened to the damn thing by now, but you should have by now. But it goes from you guys basically saving the ship, and then it hinges on Cosmonauti saying, "Whew, he made it," and she says her Russian phrase. There was nothing but there was supposed to be just a musical build-up, and then it's just Cosmonauti. And when I selected the music, the build-up just kept going and going and going, and it kept building up, and I kept having a hard time finding a place where to cut because it just kept building and building and building and building. And there ended up maybe 5 minutes or something. Yeah. So. Of just this buildup, and I had messaged you, and I'm like, I can't have this 5 minutes of just nothing but music. There has to be something there. Maybe this is a good time that we use this to go back to the ship, and we kind of deal with what's going on in the ship and how ultimately you're saving the day, and you're hearing what's happening between Gal, and you're hearing what's happening between Matt Connolly. And then ultimately it's like, then this gives me a chance to introduce Alan O, which is a character I wanted to use in the sequel. And what'd you call it? It was like organic. It was organic. It was meant to be. It had to happen in this fashion in order to even get to this point,
Yeah. Yeah, I think I did say organic. I'm not sure if that was exact words, but yes.
Holistic.
Something of that. Holistic.
Vegetarian.
I think, obviously there's so much that we do that's stream of consciousness. And I feel like this is another kind of thing where it just sort of, not that it writes itself, but it grows. It has a life of its own.
Right. And I think because it's a thing that had to happen, because I think if we just went from that build up and then back to Cosmonauti without that thing in the center, it's just, I know like I'm asking a lot of the audience to kind of come to your own conclusion what happens, but with the actual audio from Gal and Alan O, it's a definitive thing that you happens. You're not just relying on on the voiceover to carry that story or carry that that piece of information.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought your direction was good for Alan O too. You gave me some good. Yeah, I think you said some things to. You didn't say superhero, but there was something.
I think it was more superhero-esque. In my mind, it was kind of
bombastic, you know.
Bombastic. Kind of like in my mind, it was a Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah.
But he was still kind of swarmy because he's still carrying the whole Smithy thing where there's a little undertone. So there's so when you're giving the official statements, you're in that, that loud and proud, drill sergeant kind of thing where you're reading the rules, and then it's like when you get chances to get your little kicks in, you show the underbelly, and you're like, yeah, and in fact we prefer you do so, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it turned out good. I thought it sounded good. Ultimately, it was nice to hear it all come together. It's interesting when you listen back to it that you definitely feel like you're seeing something because you're putting all of those characters in the same place in your head, So, but I have an overactive imagination anyway, so it doesn't take much for me to start seeing stuff.
Well, I mean, this whole thing was interesting to begin with because it was not intended to be a Sleepless Nights podcast thing anyway. Originally, I had pitched to you about doing a radio drama that was going to be an extension. So it's so we couldn't record any more Mr. Lobo Does. Maybe we could do a Mr. Lobo Does radio drama that was pressed on vinyl and go the whole vinyl route. Or, vinyl for the select few that want it, and then CDs for the rest, and kind of do that to keep Mr. Lobo Does top of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have that story in mind, but then it was just we had seeded, for a show that has no continuity, we seeded so much continuity that there was so much going on that it was really, really easy to come up with a radio drama that kind of sculpted the whole atmosphere of what we've been building up for that 1 and or 3 years that we've been doing this.
Yeah, the 1 and or 3 years, exactly. Yeah, well, there's definitely a landscape, and I think people who listen to the show, there's all these weird callbacks and weird jokes, and people who listen to the show because they'll always drop things like chronic diarrhea or the apes and the apes or Mittens Kong or whatever it is. And I think it's kind of fun because of these little handles that people can grab onto that's more than just two guys complaining about Star Wars or not complaining about Star Wars. So, and then to be able to almost have our own Star Wars happening.
Have our own epic kind of open. And then there was just so many things to kind of include. And it's just it's prime time to do this where it's we can't really get together to shoot. So
yeah, it's so hard for us to get together and just to find ways for us to collaborate long distance. That was the part that I think everybody really loved. And it was cool to see how hungry everybody was to do it and how hungry everybody was to potentially do more of it. So that's the exciting thing is I think the task is on us to not just do. I mean, I definitely would like to do a sequel to what we've heard, but I feel like that the playing field is wide open for so many different things.
To do more things, right?
To do more things, maybe tracks for animations or actual, writing wholly original stories or even reenacting, scripts or something. Right. There's just so many different things, so many different directions we can go that are exciting and a good way to keep some creative people creating at a time where it's hard to even get out of bed sometimes.
Right. And I mean, this helps to another aspect, it's I like listening to the graphic audio when I'm in my car. This kind of gives us a little leeway where people get a little bit of a cinema insomnia adventure or cinema insomnia movie, and they don't have to be tied to their TV to get it. They can be in their car, listen to a radio drama, and then come into their house, turn on the Roku, and watch an episode.
Yeah. So again, more fun, more things. Like I said, I've got a bunch of backlog of scripts. It might be fun to dust off some of my old scripts.
Mm-hmm.
You've got new ideas for new things.
Yeah, as this unfolded, there was a lot of things where it's like, let's put this away for a potential sequel. And then when it came back to script rewrites, when the script rewrites became a thing of like, well, now's the time to seed a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody hasn't caught any of the things that are seeded for a sequel, go back and listen to that episode again. And it's like, so now I'm starting to kind of flesh out the sequel, and now it's like, oh, well, here's an idea for a trilogy now.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely a lot there to unpack, and I definitely would invite. And it's not, again, Paul wrote this. Mr. Lobo did not write this. I contributed
so now
a few things.
Now you know where to send the hate mail.
For me, I had to listen to it a few times to really, I feel, fully appreciate all the layers of it and how it all blends together and everything that is going on. So, I would definitely feel like it would be worth a re-listen if you've only listened to it once. And then I almost feel like it would be great to listen to, if you're a new listener, it would be great to come back to listen to after you've heard a bunch of the old episodes. Because I feel like there's a lot of intricate play going on where we're bouncing off of things that we've talked about from our very first episode all the way to the present.
It's a jumping on episode. So if anybody who's like kind of, they're at 53 episodes, I don't know where to start and everything. It's like, that's a good jumping on point so that they can listen to that and they're like, oh, this is kind of awesome. This is neat. And then they listen to the next one out and they're like, what's this garbage?
You raised the bar too high with this episode.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to do this every week.
Well, considering what it took, a month to produce. So, And it's like, oh, I'm just going to do the voices. I'm not going to do sound effects. I'm not going to do all this new music. Oh, I'm not going to do this. No, it ended up having, it's like, again, it's that organic thing. It's just like, it needs it.
Well, I think it's funny when you're like, well, I'm just going to do this radio drama episode for one episode. I'm like, it's going to take you a while to put that together.
Yeah. Well, my thoughts was like, with like Obi-Wan is the loneliest number where, that's awkward and weird. This was supposed to be kind of in that same vein. And I just thought it was just going to be kind of a simple thing. And then it was just like, well, Abacus has this certain sound, Gal has this certain sound, Cosmonauti has a certain sound. You've now established what Miss Mittens Kong sounds like. She has all this kind of different things going on to make that voice happen.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, then, you want to differentiate when you're in space with me versus in the room with you. Right. Where it's like my room tone has a very, very spaceshipy sound, and your room tone, I think is like an editing room where you kind of hear tape decks clicking and stuff in the background, or even when you get out to the swamp and everything. There's
I love when I'm walking through the. You hear me sloshing through the swamp because I really feel like just the way that I'm talking combined with those sound effects really gives you this idea that I'm really there. I'm approaching Alan Smithy's island and I'm sloshing through.
I love the transition where it goes from swamp to beach.
Yeah,
it's like all this ugliness, and then all of a sudden it's like this transition music, and then during the transition of the music it becomes beach. I also like that you smack a mosquito and the smack sounds fake. It is not fake. That is an actual smack that you did on mic.
Yeah, I did definitely smack myself while we were doing it. But going back to the original, like the Obi-Wan is the loneliest number episode. I mean, you kind of like threw yourself under the bus,
right?
You focused on all your worst attributes,
right,
for that episode.
But
this episode, you're playing to all your strengths. So your pre-production and your editing and your writing, and you're. I think this is a better showcase for you focusing on what you do best versus you focusing on being
awkward and weird and.
I mean, you're usually not the front man in a situation. You're more of a behind the scenes.
But I think that, with Obi-Wan, I think I had to do that. I mean, and it was the thing is like when I talked to you before recording it, I said it was going to be awkward, it was going to be weird, it was going to be strange, but it was something that I had to do. And I think by doing that, it made me comfortable in front of the mic, that people didn't really rip me down and say, oh, you were a horrible person. Granted, nobody listened to the episode, but the end of the world never happened. And it made me a little bit more confident when it comes to speaking in the podcast. It made me a little bit confident when I was doing, because it's like, oh, well, these scenes are going to be me alone. I mean, granted, Gal's there, but, I have to make Gal speak.
Yeah.
And it made me confident to be alone and kind of doing that stuff. It made me discover that if things are a little bit more scripted, I am not, I'm a little bit more on track and stuff. And, when I had to re-listen to Obi-Wan as the loneliest number, I mean, it's cringeworthy, but I had some respect for it because I had to re-listen to it to cut the flashback episode to find cuts. And I have a pretty good respect for that episode, knowing that it's bad and that we joke that it's bad, but it really isn't as bad as it seems.
No, and actually, if you hang with it, it definitely tightens up and we still have an interplay, even though I'm not there live. You have all these cuts of me audio-wise that are being played.
I like the joke that it was me by myself, but I had Miss Mittens with me, which is basically me by myself.
Yeah. Yes. Before she was Mittens Kong, certainly it was exactly
well, I was
like
still on the Black Knight satellite in that episode too.
Yeah. So, it's like I said, it's a pretty great adventure, a lot of different, and again, another aspect of the channel always being experimental and us kind of taking risks. And that was definitely one of those moments where we took a really big risk.
You have been listening to the Sleepless Knights podcast, or should we say pODDcast. pODDcast. Emphasis on the odd. Our theme is by Mars Homeworld at Deadhouse Music. Our opening announcement is by Ophelia Necro. She does a radio show called Suicide Watch. And you could reach Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com, or find me on YouTube, YouTube/Mr. Lobo, MISTERLOBO. Mr. Lobo on Facebook, Facebook/MR.LOBO, or on Twitter, at Mr. Lobo, MISTERLOBO.
Or you can find myself, Paul Sanders, or better known as BESTOW TV, at BESTOW.TV, on YouTube /BESTOW TV, on Twitter at BESTOWPROD, PROD, and on Facebook, BESTOW TV.
If you want to place an advertisement with this podcast, and gosh, why wouldn't you? We could be talking about you right now. Contact us, Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com. That's MRLOBO @CINEMAINSOMNIA.com. Or support us on Patreon. Patreon supporters get to hear this podcast before anyone else and a lot of other great stuff, right, Paul?
Sure.
Doesn't get it better than that, right? So come join the fun at
patreon.com/Sleepless Knights Podcast.
That's
patreon.com/Sleepless Knights Podcast.
Please stay up with us next week for another Sleepless Knights podcast. Or should we say, pODDcast.
pODDcast.
The best thing about being an insomniac is never having to say goodnight.
Good night.